Oh, yes, thank you so much. And we will be recording today. And so if you don't want to have your face on camera at all, then keep your camera off, but it'll mostly be on the panelists. All right, so just again, to start off, what is Ignite? Some more background for folks who are new to the space. So Ignite launched in 2010 to address the lack of women in elected office by building a pipeline of the next generation of leaders who are poised to flex their political power. And we seek to empower women and non-binary folk to pursue, not only to pursue elected office, but other political and civic careers as well. And a community council, which is this event right now, can be large open events where all community members are invited, such as this one, or they can be smaller, more intimate spaces intended for Ignite participants in our city. But generally, they aim to organize regional bodies made up of politically motivated and ambitious leaders who want to build their own skills, accelerate or activate their political and civic careers by connecting with local leaders, training, all of that. And we're just going to start off and introduce ourselves and the facilitator. So my name is Jess. I am the Austin Fellow for Ignite. My pronouns are she, they. I graduated from St. Edward's University in May with my bachelor's in social work. And here are a couple contacts. If anyone wants to stay in touch or get involved, feel free to take a quick pic. All right, moving on. And we also have one of the facilitator with us today, Sydney, who is my supervisor. She's amazing, our Southeast Regional Program Director. Her pronouns are she, her, and she has her contact information up here if you would like to get in touch with her as well. There are also a couple of moderators on today who will be around for the breakout rooms at the end. We don't have their slides up, but some amazing fellows are helping me out to help out with that later on. So let's just start off. We have a big group today, but I really just think it's important to introduce ourselves. So use that chat. Please share in the chat if you're able to, your name, your pronouns, where you're located in Austin. If you want to say, South Austin or anything specific, please feel free. And why you're dedicated or why you decided to come today. Yeah, what brought you here? What got you at your house, or I guess in your house on the Zoom room. Awesome. And I'm just gonna let y'all keep introducing yourselves as we kind of go on to the next slide and go over some community rules and some basic things before we get started. But yeah, introduce yourselves, connect. I'd love to see that in the chat. All right, so just to go over a couple things. So the objectives for today, just to kind of set the scene and a good framework for everyone. So the first is to identify housing issues and how they impact our city. Very basic, just kind of educating ourselves. Identifying effective strategies and policies that we should be championing as advocates and as community members. And the last one is to hope that y'all participants will gain an understanding of how to get involved. So not only, what policies we should be looking for and what are the issues, but also hopefully we'll gain some good information about maybe how to stay engaged. Some community agreements, just please be respectful of all of our panelists, our participants, and our facilitators. This means kind of as best you can, staying engaged and making sure that you are using your chat and respecting the mute and all of that. So I appreciate everyone for that. And a couple housekeeping. So I hope that y'all will have questions because questions is learning. However, please save those for the end. So I like to keep a little notes on the side whenever I attend things like this. So I recommend that y'all do that. We will have a 10 to 15 minute breakout room at the end where y'all get a chance to connect with one of the panelists and ask them any questions. It doesn't have to be over housing policy, but if you have questions throughout, that's a great time for them. The second is just to please fill out the participant form if you have not already done so. And I'm hoping that Sydney, you'll be able to drop that in the chat for us whenever you get a moment. This just allows us to kind of keep tabs on who's coming to our events. So regardless of whether you fall into the typical category of Ignite participant, if you're here today, please fill it out for us. And then the last one is please stay till the end to receive the exit survey. It really helps with improving our programming. And also if you are here for and hoping to receive credit for academia or extra credit from a professor, that exit survey is your ticket to that. So I please everyone fill it out, but specifically if you're there to receive extra credit and you want to be validated for your attendance today, that's necessary. Awesome. So let's meet our panelists. So first off, we have Councilmember Ann Kitchen, and she is a council member for District 5 in South Austin for the past 7 years. She's a member of the council's Housing and Planning, Health and Human Services, and Mobility committees. She chairs the Water Oversight Committee and serves as the vice chair of COMPO, the regional transportation planning body for Central Texas. She also serves as the Capital Metro's board of directors. Ann is an attorney with an expertise in improving access to healthcare and social services for low-income women, children, and families. She has over 10 years of state service, including as a children's caseworker and assistant attorney general and as state representative. Ann has led, with Councilmember Tovo, efforts to address homelessness in Austin while on council. Most recently, she led the creation of the city's HEAL initiative, which is an innovative and successful approach to connecting unhoused individuals to shelter, health, and social services, and a path to permanent housing. She was instrumental in the recent $100 million plus investment of ARPA funding for the housing and related services and creation of and hiring of the homeless services officer, and participated in the community-wide effort to accelerate our homeless response system. Welcome, Councilmember Kitchen. Next, we have Councilmember Kathy Tovo, who represents City Council District 9, which includes downtown and West Campus, Central Austin neighborhoods such as Cherrywood, Delwood to Hyde Park, Mueller, Clarksville, and North Loop, and the South Austin neighborhoods of Travis Heights, Sherwood Forest, and Bolden Creek. She is the only council member to have served in both the at-large and geographically based systems of representation, and she serves as mayor pro temp from 2015 to 2018. Her council service includes chairing the Public Health Committee and serving on the Audit and Finance Committee, Austin Energy Utility Oversight Committee, Sobering Center and Local Government Corporation, Visit Austin and the Police Retirement Board, and the Joint Subcommittee of the City of Austin, Travis County, and AISD. She is a member of the Settlement Home Advisory Board and previously served as a chair of the Indian Community Homelessness Organization ECHO Membership Council. She holds a PhD and MA from the University of Texas at Austin and a BA with honors in journalism and American studies from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. While the University of Texas, she developed and taught women's studies classes on autobiographical writings, among many other courses. Welcome, Councilmember Tovo. Next, we have Nora Leonardis Moore, Executive Director of Housing Works Austin, President of, I'll just go ahead. Nora has served on the Executive Director of Housing Works Austin since August of 2017. She's become involved in the affordable housing world in 2013, raising money for the successful 2013 housing bond campaign. In 2014, she began consulting with Housing Works. Housing Works Austin is a 501c3 nonprofit organization whose mission is to conduct research, educational initiatives, and advocacy around housing affordability. Nora's civic and political achievements span the last 42 years. She spent 12 years in state government management, with the last 5 serving as the first executive director of the Texas Lottery Commission. As a community volunteer, Leonardis Moore serves on the board of directors of Ballet Austin, past president of the board of Sally M. Kingsburg Sarcoma Research Foundation Incorporated, and a member of the Transit Forward and the Texas Rural Communities Board of Directors. She also serves as a national board member and president of La Union del Pueblo Entero, Lupe organization, which was founded by Cesar Chavez, as well as founding member of the Lupe Votes Board of Directors. Welcome, Nora. Our last panelist is Yasmin Smith, a product of Breakthrough Central Texas. She graduated from St. Stephen's in 2012, received her BA from St. Edward's University in 2015, and went on to earn her JD from the University of Texas School of Law in 2018. She is a founding member and managing partner of Abundance Law PLLC, where she assists clients with business and corporation, estate and probate law, oil and gas contracts, and real estate issues. Additionally, Yasmin currently acts as both the Director of Development and Partnerships and the Director of Justice and Advocacy for the Austin Area Urban League, as well as serving as Community Engagement Specialist for the Austin's Mayor Steve Adler's office. Prior to founding Abundance Law PLLC, Yasmin worked for the City of Austin's Law Department, focusing on employment law, technology law, municipal operations, and constitutional law, as well as serving as a commissioner for the Board of Adjustments. Additionally, Yasmin serves on various nonprofit agencies in a legal capacity and as a board member, and is currently the chair of People United for Mobility Action, PUMA, in which she has been instrumental in local and regional transportation and infrastructure policy decisions through a mobility justice lens, one of her biggest accomplishments being that of successfully advocating for $300 million of anti-displacement funding in conjunction with Project Connect, which created a national template in transportation. In her free time, Yasmin serves on the campus committee of the St. Stephen's Board. One of Yasmin's greatest joys in life is giving back to her beloved hometown in mind, body, and soul, and all that she does. Welcome, Yasmin. All right, amazing. I'm so excited for this panel. We have some amazing speakers today, and I can't wait to kind of hear the conversation that develops. So as we approach this topic, it's important to start with the basic understanding that all forms of housing in Austin have become increasingly less affordable over the years. And let's begin the conversation with this category of housing affordability. So to start off, this question is for Anne and Kathy. What does affordable housing mean, lowercase a versus uppercase a, and where is Austin headed regarding the number and availability of subsidized affordable housing units? And let's start with Anne.
Well, first, let me say thanks for inviting me. You know, I've been a longtime supporter of women in office, and I have to give of supporting women in office. I have to give a plug to our current Austin City Council, which is a super majority women. We have 8 out of 11 council members are women. So, so all of you who are listening or are part of this today, I hope you'll think about running for office. So let's see, to answer the question, what does affordable housing mean? I want to talk about just real quickly about our housing blueprint. A number of years back, we, for the first time as a city, created a strategic housing blueprint. And in that blueprint, we defined affordable housing and we set goals. And we basically define them based on, based on MFI, median family income. And so generally speaking, we think about affordable housing as, in different categories, 31 to 60% MFI, 61 to 80% MFI, 81 to 120% MFI, and over 121% MFI. That's a lot of numbers, but the thing to think about there is a lot of our lower income housing, our housing for lower income folks is where the real challenge is. And that's below 60% MFI and really below 30% MFI, median family income, because you have to have a subsidy. Folks at those income levels just cannot afford rent levels or purchase price. So when we talk about affordable housing, we are often mean below 60% MFI. Sometimes we mean below 80% MFI. And in our challenging market now, we're trying to think about ways to help people, teachers and more middle, what we think of as middle income folks, which is 80 to 120% of MFI, for them to be able to afford housing also. So where are we headed? I think that Kathy and Nora may want to, speak to that, but because we have a report card every year, I would say that generally speaking, we're in good shape for our 81 to 100% MFI, but our lower levels, we're really challenged to build significant housing because we have to have a subsidy. So I'll let someone else speak. Kathy, do you want to jump in?
Sure, and I think I'll pick up on, let me just, first of all, I too want to say thank you so much. I think this might be my third conversation through Ignite, and it's always super fun to be invited to participate. I've really enjoyed so much the previous conversations. And so thanks so much for the opportunity to participate here. And, if I can ever be of assistance to you, please don't hesitate to reach out. I really am always excited to talk to people who are interested in public office and public service. So thanks again for the opportunity to participate. Just to put some numbers to those, as Councilmember Kitchen talked about, the real gap in where we need capital A affordable housing is in that 30 to 60% range, especially. And just to put some numbers around that, for a 3-person household to be at a 30% median family income would be $26,700. And then at 60%, you would be looking at a salary of $53,460 for a family of 3. So you can imagine on an income of that, trying to secure housing in Austin would be really challenging. And our blueprint, as Councilmember Kitchen mentioned, tracks how many units, how many new units have come on the market at those different levels. And if you look at those for the last several years, and Housing Works does a terrific job of providing snapshots of this information too, you'll see that we are not where we need to be with our blueprint goals in any category, but especially in that 30 to 60, we're falling short. I would like to just discuss for a minute, I'm not sure I have a minute left, so I'll make it really snappy. You know, affordable housing with a lowercase, I think was part of the question too. And a good deal of our affordable, lowercase affordable housing is naturally occurring affordable housing. So these are units that might be in older complexes that are more affordably priced. And right now, I think the estimate is that about 40% of the more affordable housing here in Austin is not subsidized. It's not capital A affordable. It is just naturally occurring affordable housing. And so I think we have some questions later that'll get to this more specifically, but from my perspective, that's one of the real challenges that we have. In addition to creating new units that are preserved or subsidized and are going to be affordable over the long run, we also need to look at those some of those units that are naturally occurring affordable housing and work to preserve those.
Thank you all both for your answers. And I think it's definitely a great segue to Nora's question, which is, what is the Housing Works Blueprint Scorecard, and what are a few of the main findings or goals from the 2020 report related to Austin's affordability? Oh, we can't hear you. I'm sorry. There we go.
Yep, unmute. Here we go. So thank you also for the invitation. I'm so excited about the panelists as well. Thanks to both council members. They kind of gave the technical details about the MFI. So, because it gets complicated. And so if you want to learn a little bit more about the MFI categories, HUD puts out generally in June an updated information. Just go to Google search and do HUD MFI categories for our MSA region, and you'll pull it up. And it's not only from family of 4, but also a single person and how much range of dollars are in each of those MFI categories. So the blueprint is, we have now conducted 3 blueprints. We're now at a progress to date for 3 years. Housing Works did. You can also go to the website, www.housingworks.org, and pull down on the research tab and you'll find them. And the city has, we're so excited because we're one of the few cities who have produced a strategic blueprint. And so it's great that we have goals. We are lacking in some of those goals right now. We only produced since 2017, 2018, a little over 7,000 units, which is only about 12% of the goal that we have to reach for 10 years. So we're behind. And just like the council members said, both of them, 30% MFI and below, we are really in need of moving forward with that. But again, it's very difficult because it requires a lot of subsidy and the developers always have to find extra money. So that's part of the reason. So we have a lot of things that have been good. We've produced above 80% to 120, and 120 and above, we've actually done really well. So again, take a look at it and you'll see what else we've done there.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Nora. The next question is for Yasmin, and it is about your work as well. So what priority conversations around affordability have you been engaged with through your work with the AAUL, the mayor's office, and other justice-oriented legal and advocacy spaces?
Thank you. So I also want to say thank you for allowing me in this space and making this space welcome. And considering we have some of my hats on the screen here, I think it's a good time for a disclaimer. I'm going to be speaking as Yasmin Smith solely today. And so none of my views and opinions are attributed to any entity or person that I have, am, or will be working for or consulting with. But the priority conversations around affordability that I have been a part of in my short tenure, but have had an opportunity to be in a lot of those conversations there are a lot because affordability I have found is such a nuanced beast, right? I almost think about it like an octopus, right? And then there are like a million tentacles, and each tentacle is an intersection of a quality of life nuances that make up the ability for a human to thrive in our society. And so the most direct one, right, would be our housing crisis, one of those tentacles. But within our housing crisis, we have to think about, as was stated before, our 60 to 30% MFIers, with the lack of subsidies that are available to us, that really makes that person that's already struggling to pay rent, already struggling to stabilize themselves, it makes them very likely to fall even further behind in a good quality of life. And then even upwards, right? We call them our missing middle, those guys that, just make enough money to survive and not get subsidies, but they're so close to being able to be in that 60 to 30% MFIers, especially considering what we're going through in this time and place right now, and their lack of supply to adequate units for them, as well as stabilizing resources, is also a tension point. And then there's the 80 to 120s that, yeah, they're doing all right, but they're in houses that are pricing out everybody else, and it continues the cycle. And that's just one tentacle, right? That's just a very high level of one tentacle of what makes one intersection that makes up what affordability is. In the conversations around that one intersection, but you can have those same type of conversations in the same nuanced way in education and youth development, in criminal justice, in food access and health, and the transportation infrastructure. The list goes on and on. So there are many conversations and priority conversations around affordability, but I do think that as a unit, as Austin, or whom we claim to be as Austin, we are prioritizing our most vulnerable, and those are our 0% MFIers. Those are our unhoused neighbors who are very much caught very between a rock and a hard place with the lack of housing units and subsidies from the housing crisis, in conjunction with the criminalization of their very existence. Right. So those are the ping points for me, and that's definitely my priority.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for that answer. I knew it was a broad question, but you definitely brought it back in for us, and I appreciate that. Moving on to the next question, and we're going to start off with Kathy on this one. So what policies, programs, or initiatives are city leaders currently working on to improve the financial accessibility of rental and permanent housing in Austin?
Well, thanks for the question. Let me say first, I'm not going to capture all of them. We have a whole slew of them, and I want to try to be respectful of the 2 minutes. I think I went way over last time. So, but we have everything from, I would say, to back up, we have tried to, for example, when we got the federal dollars that came through the COVID relief, we invested quite a bit of it, about $15 million in rental assistance, and that served more than 8,000 families. On an ongoing basis, we do have programs that provide rental housing development assistance to programs, to developers who are developing rental housing. We have been really fortunate in Austin. I was excited to be part of the advocacy team, one of the community volunteers who helped advocate for the very first affordable housing bond way back when. Austin was one of the first communities to have a housing bond, and we have successfully passed several more, including a really large one, a $250 million, I think it was last time. And we have invested that in a variety of really great projects. We're able to invest those voter approved bond dollars combined with private fundraising that the nonprofits are able to bring to it. And that's one of the ways that we've created new affordable housing that will remain in most cases permanently affordable. We might have an opportunity to talk a little bit more about this later with some of the questions about gentrification, but we've also at the city been able to invest in tenant eviction programs as well. And that's one of the areas where I have led on to make sure that those who might be facing eviction and would really benefit from having some advocacy and some assistance in that process with the goal of preventing eviction are well represented in those proceedings and have access to legal resources. So those are just some of the ways in which at the city that we've worked to create both affordable housing for ownership opportunities as well as rental opportunities. A lot of it happens through collaboration, through helping fund organizations here in Austin. Some of it we do through the Austin Housing Finance Corporation, which is actually a government entity, and we do build some for sale units, some home ownership opportunities here in the city.
Great. Anne, would you like to add?
Yes, and thanks, Kathy. And as Kathy mentioned, we could probably, everybody on this panel could spend all day talking to you about different aspects of housing. So I think of it in two buckets as public and private. Public meaning the scope of influence that the city can have within our programs, in our rules and regulations and ordinances. And then private, which is really that intersection with our zoning activities. So a couple of things I want to mention. First off, I do want to give kudos to Yasmin on the anti-displacement dollars. The 300 million that we were able to secure for anti-displacement recognizes the important, and a lot of that is housing, not all of it is housing, but that we were able to recognize how important it is that we invest in people who are living along the transportation lines for Project Connect. And so she was instrumental in writing the language that we put into our contract with the voters. And so we secured 300 million. We secured a process for a community-led process for determining where that 300 million should be spent, as well as an equity tool. Lots of work still to be done in terms of making that a reality, but we've got some structures in place. We also have a community advisory committee in place. So I wanted to call that out because that's an aspect of housing and anti-displacement that's nationally cutting edge. And it shows that here in Austin, we recognize housing and affordability as touching on everything. So I wanted to mention that program. I also wanted to mention the LDC changes, the Land Development Code. Kathy's been instrumental in a number of those. I led on an effort around vertical VMU before December, and I know that the council will be continuing the first part of this year to be working on changes to our Land Development Code to encourage more affordable housing, and lots of details there, and happy to talk with you all more about that. But essentially what is happening in that regard is that because of state law, we cannot require private developments to put in place affordable housing, but we can incent it. So we have a whole range of activities for that. So I think we're out of time here. We could talk about a lot more, but those were some of the key things that I wanted to mention.
All right, great, y'all. Thank you so much. I feel that sometimes it's hard to keep up with everything that goes on, and we know that things are happening, but we don't know what they are. So I appreciate that kind of overview as best you could do it in the time frame. So moving on, this question we'll start out with Nora for. What can young advocates do to assist in mobilizing positive policy solutions and to support grassroots community work around housing affordability?
Thank you. There's so much. First, educate yourself. This is a complicated issue. It gets, you can get into a lot of technical pieces, but really the most important thing is to understand a little bit about the issue, and then let your city council members know, your Travis County commissioners know, wherever you are, that you're interested in this issue. I think there's another way in which you can also participate by joining a nonprofit who is actively involved in the process and does community engagement. And I'm sure Yasmin's going to talk about that in just a minute. I think there's also the ability for you to vote when the time comes for bonds that affect housing affordability, or like, for example, Project Connect, which of course will be transformational. And I do have to say thank you to both council members for all of their work on that, because it is a significant change that will occur in our community, and it will be better for all of our workforce, because they'll have more transit to be able to get around. So I'm going to turn it over to Yasmin so that she can add to that, but I think a lot of it is get involved, educate yourself, and then let people know that you're interested.
Great answer. And Nora was right on the money with where I was going. Get to work. If you want to be about this life, come join us in the work. There is work to be done. Find it. Find whatever it is. Whatever you do well, whatever calls your heart, whatever makes you want to wake up and keep charging in the morning. Find it. Settle in. Understand it's going to be a marathon, not a race. And do that work from a place of being resourced. Right? I don't think we talk about this much, but making sure that you're good, mind, body, and spirit, because that's really important for this journey. And then number two, doing this work through a human-centered approach, right? You have to make sure that it feels good and people feel loved in the work that you do when you do assist in positive policy solutions, because that's what makes it positive. That's what makes it revolutionary, is that human-centered and putting the people before the price tag or the project. And you know, just have fun with it. It's going to be a long journey. You're not going to always succeed. You're going to fail. You're going to get tired. But all in all, you know, if you do commit to this work and commit to positive policy solutions and literally changing the world around you, it'll be worth it, team. So find one of the many fires that are afoot, and get to work.
Sorry, y'all, couldn't find my mute button. Thanks y'all so much for those answers. Yeah, those are great. It's hard to get involved sometimes, but it's even harder to be involved in fighting for it. So appreciate all y'all's work and some guidance for folks looking to get involved. All right, so again, thank you so much for that discussion on our first category related to affordability. Let's move forward with our second category on homelessness. This is clearly something that has impacted the residents of Austin immensely. And there has also been some heightened public awareness and in many cases divisiveness around some related local policy solutions. So definitely a really important issue category, and I'm excited to hear y'all's discussion on this. So to start off, we'll begin with Kathy on this question and then to Nora. What are some of the primary causes of homelessness in Austin? Let's just start there.
Well, thank you. I guess I'd start by saying, you know, I've had the privilege of participating in multiple points and time count, and that some of you may have done so. And in fact, this is a great way to engage on this issue. This is a time every year. It won't happen this year, and it didn't happen last year because of the pandemic, but 500 to 600 volunteers go out on one night in our city and interact with and talk with individuals who are experiencing homelessness, primarily unsheltered homelessness, and ask a series of questions. And then that information goes to the federal government and comes back and helps determine funding decisions for our community. And what I've learned in that experience is that every individual I've spoken to has a different story. And so, you know, I want to just preface the next remarks by saying, you know, for the individual, I mean, there are certainly some general things that are contributing to homelessness. The high cost of housing is certainly one of them. Inequitable access to education, to work opportunities, systemic racism, all of these are certainly contributing factors to why many individuals become homeless. I can also tell you from that experience and just from my reading in the field that, you know, when I interacted and spoke with and met individuals who are experiencing homelessness through the point in time count and through some of the work I do on council, you know, I can tell you I've spoken with young people who were kicked out of their homes. I've spoken to young people who aged out of foster care. That's a large number of the younger people we're seeing. I have through my other work met with families who, you know, may have missed a paycheck because a member of their family got sick and they no longer, you know, they lost their job as a result. So I would say I think it's really important to recognize that behind each and every individual who is experiencing homelessness, there may be a very different circumstance. For some, it's a medical issue that led them to leave work. For others, it may be a different path. And as we're talking about engagement again, when we're doing those again, I would really encourage participation in the point in time count. It really does. It is a very good way to engage in the subject and learn more about our neighbors who are experiencing homelessness and what might have contributed to that situation.
Absolutely. Dora?
So, again, just like Councilman Tovo said, you've got potentially all these reasons why someone is homeless. And I always get frustrated when someone's, well, they just need to go get a job. Well, it's not that easy. And I think one of the main reasons is that, the people that become homeless, they didn't have a bank account or a savings account like maybe you or I do, where, when you get behind, you pull from your savings and you pay your mortgage or you pay your rent. Thank God for the rental assistance program. Austin did a fabulous job in distributing the rental assistance program this year. But, what happens is when you can't pay your rent, then you get kicked out. And I know Councilman Tovo and I worked several years ago on just trying to identify the number of families that live in their car. It's not just who you see on the street, but there are people who are homeless and their kids are going to school, but they literally go back to their car, or they're living in a hotel, or with family members trying to get by. There's a lot of different reasons, but to the wealth gap and the inequality in our racial system has really contributed to it as well. So I just say be a little more patient and understanding when you see people on the street, because you really don't know what they've been through, and you really don't know how hard they are trying to get out of it. It's hard for us to really understand what they've gone through. So I would just say, learn a little bit more about that situation as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Thank you both for those answers. The next question, we're going to start off with Yasmin. And this has a little bit of a preface to it, but metropolitan areas across the country, LA especially, have experienced mass quantities of housing units being purchased or withheld from the market by speculators, corporate investors, and anonymous ownership entities. Is Austin facing a similar situation? And if so, what influence do mass vacancies have on homelessness in our city?
So I'm going to leave the numbers to Ann, because that's what she does really well. But, if I was going to take this statement as true on its face, I would say that most likely vacancies would have something to do with people being priced out and not necessarily people needing or wanting to occupy those spaces. But I would push back against the statement itself and say that rather than investors or entities withholding units, I would say it's rather them bequeathing those units in a way that prioritizes the profit over people, which inflates our market and has disastrous effects on real people. And I say real people through all of my lenses, right? The real person who is renting and misses the paycheck, or the one that was well established, and the medical issue, or and our unhoused neighbors that right now, while we're about to have a freeze, are without homes. And so I think the real issue is how we whom we welcome to be our neighbors, and ensuring that they prioritize our values, which includes the humanity of others. So I don't think they're withholding. I think they love to put bodies in apartments and in houses, but they do so at the cost. They do so at the cost of the greater society.
Thank you for that. Anne, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think that, actually in Austin, it's a bit different than perhaps in other places. We aren't really experiencing mass vacancies here. In fact, to the contrary, our inventory is low. We have a very low vacancy rate.
Mhm.
Just to give you some data about that, as Yasmin said, our inventory of homes is really low. It's less than a month, when 6 months is the standard for a balanced market. And for a multifamily vacancy rate, the multifamily vacancy rate is about 94%, and that's more evidence of a tight market. So, so what investors are doing, as Yasmin mentioned, the difficulty of having so many we do have investors here, and the difficulty with having that is that they are less likely to offer their inventory or offer housing at a level that's affordable with the big A, affordable for low income, as Yasmin was saying. So that's difficult. It also makes it very difficult. This tight market makes it difficult when our programs that are helping our unhoused neighbors find housing makes it very difficult, because the interventions and the assistance that we put in place in our homelessness response system is about connecting individuals to immediate shelter, but then very quickly connecting them to more permanent housing. And the availability of more permanent housing is very difficult, both for individuals that need supportive housing because they're not able to live on their own, or individuals who can live on their own. It's difficult to find housing. The other problem, of course, is with some of the history of some with criminal justice involvement, some with mental health issues or other types of involvement, it's difficult to find landlords or apartment owners or complexes who are willing to accept people who have been unhoused. And so that's the other aspect of this. It's a financial aspect, and there's also an aspect to it that is a lack of education and a concern on the part of, the folks who rent property. And all that contributes to difficulties in finding places for people to live.
Mhm. Thank you both so much for those answers. I personally feel like I have kind of a better understanding of the situation after that. So I think that those were great. Going on to the next question, and just keep on talking. We'll start with you on this one. Where are we going now? And what types of policy solutions and homelessness reduction tactics are being discussed at the city currently?
Well, this is another one of those that we could talk all day on.
Sure.
But let me I'm going to talk about a specific program. I think Kathy has a lot to say on this program, also on this subject also. First, as an aside, the conversation we were just having, I wanted to encourage people to go to ECHO's website. There's a dashboard there that provides a whole lot of information about services provided, as well as the challenges that people who are unhoused or unhoused neighbors are experiencing. Lots of data there on the ECHO website. And as soon as I find the link, I'll put that in the chat. So I want to talk about, there's a whole range of things that we're doing. I want to mention that the city council committed about $100 million in ARPA funds towards homelessness. Now I'll leave that to Kathy to talk more about that and the other things that she has led on. The county also recently contributed around $100 million towards addressing homelessness. And there's also been an effort in our community to look at a more community-wide approach. I want to focus on one thing really quick, and that's the HEAL initiative. It's an initiative that I brought last year as a pilot program that the council decided to continue this year. What's different about HEAL is under the HEAL program, we identify particular camping areas that people are camping that are especially unsafe. I say especially because I don't believe it's safe to camp outside, and our unhoused neighbors are not in safe situations. But what we've done is we've identified particular locations, and then we've taken an approach that's a holistic approach to that location, gone and offered folks living in that location immediate, next couple of days, access to shelter, And then connection to social services and health and mental health services to help them overcome whatever challenges they have to find permanent housing. So to date, we have in phase 1, we successfully worked with 4 encampments. Phase 2 now that we're on right now, we've done 2 encampments and we're about to do another one. We've been able to help 182 residents so far, 182 of our unhoused neighbors with immediate offers of shelter under the HEAL program. And I want to state this stat, 93% of those, 93% of those offered have accepted debt service. And the reason I want to say that is that there's been lots of conversation in the public about how people living on the streets don't want help, they want to live on the streets. Flat out not true. And what we've seen from the HEAL initiative, when offered real immediate help, people take advantage of that. So the HEAL initiative is just getting started. Those numbers may sound small to you, but 182 people. Think about it the way others have been talking about it, and Yasmin has mentioned. There's 182 people so far we've been able to help. And so I want to mention that there's a lot of other things we're doing as a city, but I think that the HEAL initiative is one that has shown us a path that can be successful.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. And I will highlight a couple other of our initiatives. We have a range, and the city has invested in working to end homelessness for a while now. It's certainly been a priority of my office, as it has been of Councilmember Kitchen. It has now become kind of the top priority for our whole city council. Some of the initiatives that we have that have been in place for a while that you may or may not be aware of or may be familiar with, the Homelessness Outreach Street Team started several years ago. And this is an interdisciplinary team of social workers as well as EMS, and sometimes APD supports that work as well. And it was an APD initiative modeled after some work in Houston and San Antonio. And this interdisciplinary team focus and role is to build relationships with individuals who are experiencing homelessness and to work to connect them to resources. So making sure that they are in the queue, that they've done the coordinated assessment or in the queue for housing, but also helping meet those immediate needs, whether they're medical needs or assistance with identification so that they can begin getting services or a range of others. And it's been a really successful, powerful program. We have, as a city, invested in purchasing hotels, and that has helped support some of the work that Councilmember Kitchen led on, which she just described. And we are also continuing to support through our dollars, our regular investments, but as well the federal dollars. We are supporting organizations that are providing emergency shelter. The city provides emergency shelter downtown through our contractor Front Steps at the Arch. We also have a women and children shelter, and both Councilmember Kitchen and I work to expand that shelter to provide more beds. That is being run by the Salvation Army. The city has also supported the expansion of the Rathgaber Family Center, also at Tannehill, near our city women and children shelter. And that support that the city provided allowed the women and children who were in our downtown Salvation Army shelter to move there. So we work, we have some city initiatives, but we also primarily help support organizations in the city that are providing emergency shelter and other kinds of services to individuals experiencing homelessness. We also run the Downtown Austin Community Court, and this is a diversion program that helps connect individuals who are experiencing homelessness and others who come through that court system, but increasingly it's individuals experiencing homelessness with resources, with case management, and with the end goal of housing. So those are some of the things that we have in place. As Councilmember Kitchen mentioned, we received a good allocation of dollars through the federal government, through the American Rescue Plan Act. And as a council, we agreed to use nearly all of those funds toward the really important goal of ending homelessness here.
Mhm.
And that ended up being about $106 million of those new dollars are going to be invested in homelessness. And we structured a plan, and she and I worked together with some of our other colleagues to structure some direction to staff that resulted in a plan to make those investments across the spectrum, so that we're investing in prevention, as well as not just shelter, but really connecting individuals to permanent housing and services, whether they're workforce assistance or mental health resources, substance use resources, just a range of services to help people be successful in that housing. So we've got a lot of work, and it's going to require a lot of private participation too. Even that substantial new investment is not going to get us there in this community. So it's going to rely on some substantial private investment, which is also really active and engaged and moving forward. So it's we certainly have more work to do, but we're in a better place today in terms of our investments. And I believe the coordination and the political support than we were several years ago.
Great. Thank you both for those answers. Definitely helps us all kind of learn more about those programs. Appreciate the work being done. So this next question is going to be the last one of this category, and we're going to start off with Nora. And the question is, what are the ideal housing models or policies that advocates at organizations and coalitions in Austin are urging us to work towards? Some examples I threw out there are just public housing or social housing models. And I would love to kind of hear your voice on this, however you interpret it, but thinking about ideal future goals.
Well, I first want to put a plug in for the land development code and updating it, and it's been a difficult go at it, but it is something that we should continue to strive to get done, because I think it will help fix a lot of the things that are complicated, because over the years it's just been piecemeal together. So that's one. But the bottom line is there's also things like shared equity program. I don't know if most of you know, but 25% of the houses in Miller neighborhood are under a shared equity program, which means that they are, the Miller Foundation holds those houses and they resell them to those that are below 60% MFI or 80% MFI. And then those people who own those homes have the ability to gain equity for themselves and stay in those homes. You also have the land trusts that we have a nonprofit by the name of Guadalupe Neighborhood Development Corporation, first land trust in Texas. And they also are able, it's a model program. There's things like right to return programs that, is a model program. We don't have exactly that in Austin, but it is something that we should strive for. Stabilization for tenants. There's some model programs out there that we continue to strive for to make sure that tenants have their protections in court and some kind of rental protections. So I think that when you look at all of those, there's so many around the country that we can strive for. And we do some good work here. I really believe that Austin is above a lot of other cities in that arena, but there's so much more work to do.
I mean, you listed out all the good ones, but I would say yes, ditto to all that. I also want to shout out GNDC, the Land Trust. We are a template. Austin is truly a template, a national template in many things, including that model in transportation and our police contract. I could go on about my home city. But some ideal housing models include obviously our rapid rehousing, transitional housing, permanent supportive housing, but whatever the ideal housing model is, it's important to highlight the holistic service provision that happens around the unit, right? Whatever it is, whatever the ideal is, and I'll get to that in a second, but whatever the ideal is, it appears that it comes with this holistic service provision in order to truly transition an individual from surviving to thriving. But another thing that we need to consider in, pontificating upon the ideal housing model is the unique character of our unhoused neighbor population. It is not one size fit all. And I'm saying this from my experience in the Unhoused Community Council, a model I was able to, in partnership, able to launch through the Austin Area Urban League under the Justice and Advocacy Division, where we take those with lived experience. We call them ambassadors. They have different districts. We take those individuals and we tweak policy, and then we place them right in front of their policymakers in order to have that conversation about what is ideal to them. And it's different for different people, and very nuanced. And so in the discussion of the ideal approach that is human-centered and definitely has holistic service provision, we need to also start to expand our mind of what is home for you may not necessarily be home for another person and what they actually want. And we have to be open to that as a community and honest about that as a community if we're ever going to make sure that our unhoused neighbors are at least sheltered and comfortable in the spaces that they reside.
Wow, I'm lucky to have the panel I have today. Thank you all for those answers. And that helps kind of wrap up that second category on homelessness. And we're now beginning our third and final category related to gentrification and displacement, another important aspect to understanding the full impact of this housing crisis. And we're just going to go ahead and start off. Yasmin, if you want to continue to have the mic to kick us off, the question is, what is residential segregation and how is it connected to systems of gentrification and displacement? And is it an issue in Austin?
Residential segregation and gentrification / displacement are cause and effect, right? So residential segregation is the systemic way that we employ our resources as a community in order to disenfranchise people. And this has happened since the very beginning, right? We can know your history. We can start with the 1928 master plan that literally created the Negro district, took us from where we were the most scattered, the most populous, actually right after the Civil War. And with that 1928 plan, we were subjugated to the east side of 35, it being a literal racial divider. That was the place that we could not go across if you were Black. And then once we were populated there, right, then we were redlined, and even to get us there, they cut off resources. So you couldn't go to school, you couldn't get your water turned on, they literally forced us, redlined, and then once they redlined us, continue to perpetuate through criminal justice systems, food deserts, health, all of these systematic oppressions that degraded the population to a point where even though we were resilient and made the east side, that district, one that beckoned all to come to its domain, so disenfranchised we were at the point of the rising popularity of Austin, that we were then displaced from the very place that we were subjugated to, watered and nourished, and loved. And so we continue to see that today, right? We continue to see these small pockets of groups and people, especially from disenfranchised and traditionally and historically marginalized communities, group together and make a space and begin to actually come across, actually thriving. And then due to systemic oppression, due to policies and procedures and laws, they are then displaced. And those that come after them are the ones that get to take the benefit in the shiny object that is now in their neighborhood, right? So when you think about these bus lines, right? Project Connect is one. I was out on the front line saying yes, but it was so important that there was that $300 million of anti-displacement funding in order to ensure that those that were there could reap those benefits as well. It's almost like a marker. Residential segregation through systematic policies and procedures is almost like a warning shot for your neighbors to know when that new bus line comes, when they put bike lanes in, when the lights actually start working, when we can actually start driving on our own street. That's the calling card that residential segregation is on its way, your displacement is on its way, and the shiny thing in the hood is not for those in the hood, it's for those that are coming to replace you. And we see it over and over and over again to this very day.
I think I'm going to just let Yasmin just continue to talk because she really has the pulse of this issue. And I was also, it was really funny because I also had the 1928 plan as something I was going to answer, but and it divided with I-35, the 1928 plan, it divided East and West, and it has never changed from that point on. And if you don't believe that gentrification is happening in Austin, just get in your car and drive to East Austin or drive to South Austin or any of those areas that you see massive changes happening and neighborhoods that are changing right before your eyes. I want to say that I want to talk a little bit about the glass half full, because I think that just like you have two council members who are really on top of this and really talking and doing something about it on this panel, I think we have to keep talking about it, and we have to understand how difficult it is to make some changes, because some of them are not easy, so that we can, stop or slow down gentrification. I was really shocked at ABOR, Austin Board of Realtors, put out their report today. And the one thing that really drew my attention to it, even though unfortunately we've been reading them lately, is that only 4% of homes sold this last year were at $300,000 or less. And if you think about it, like how many people are going to be able to find those homes? And it was only 4%. And we have been moving, our housing market has been increasing by at least 20% every single year for the last several years. So we have to keep talking about this and finding ways to find the policies and the model programs in which we can slow this thing down.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, thank you both for those answers. It definitely answered the question and gave us a lot to consider and think about and understand when approaching this issue. The next question will start off with Kathy, and it is, what role do zoning laws and land use planning play in anti-displacement policy and community work?
Well, it's a good question. I think there are a range of different perspectives on it, but I'll offer you mine. I have, so I would say there are opportunities when we have developers come in and ask for increased entitlements. We have opportunities to secure some of that benefit for the community. Councilmember Kitchen mentioned before, we don't have inclusionary zoning here in the state. We don't have the ability to do that. In some states, you could say, for example, if you're building a new complex with 150 units or more, 10% of those have to be at a certain rate to make sure that there are some affordable units within there. We don't have the ability under state law to do that. But what we can do is if you come in and ask for a zoning change to create a project of, say, 60 feet instead of the 30 feet you're allowed to, we can, if we have a density bonus program on the ground, we can say, a certain percentage of those have to be affordable. One of the reasons that compelled me to run for council is that I felt like our city council at the time was not taking strong enough action on that it again and again, development was allowed to go forward with zoning entitlements without capturing some of that benefit for the community, and especially with regard to affordable housing. So some of the work that we're doing now is to update those density bonus calculations to make sure that as we see our city is exploding in terms of development, especially in the downtown area, to make sure that we're capturing some of that we've set that appropriately, that even when we're seeing commercial development, if they are getting more entitlements, higher, bigger than their current zoning would allow, that we are making sure that there's a contribution to affordable housing, best on site, because we need those units everywhere, but at least getting a contribution is good. I think we also, though, need to be thoughtful for those of you who follow the land development code conversations, there is not a consensus on this point, but I would say, what I believe and what I see in the evidence around me and see in the research is that when you have to be careful about how you move forward with this. If you suddenly rezone swaths of existing housing, you are creating an incentive for that housing to be redeveloped. And as that starts to happen, the housing prices increase, and some of those existing residents, whether they're renters or owners, will find it harder to stay in those as the prices increase. And so, I talked a little bit earlier in one of my answers about the need to really be thoughtful about how we preserve the existing lowercase affordable housing that we have. So as we embrace land use changes, we also need to be thoughtful about, are we incentivizing the redevelopment of areas that will really be creating such high cost housing that existing residents will find it harder to stay. I do think we should use more tools like accessory dwelling units. We've had a lot of conversation over the last years about that, and I led on some work to help look toward how we can provide some capital for homeowners who want to do that, creating new housing opportunities within areas, but also providing some extra income for homeowners who need it to help pay their property taxes and to remain in place. Being thoughtful, and this also gets to land use and to some of our other policies, being thoughtful about how we regulate short-term rentals. There are cities that are seeing fewer and fewer rental units, in part because short-term rentals are eating into that long-term rental market. And that too has been an ongoing conversation here in the city of Austin. And right now while we regulate the overall percentage, we've not done a good job of regulating those that are operating illegally. And so definitely some of our housing stock is being used for more lucrative short-term rentals instead of being available to Austinites. And that's unfortunate. So those are some of the ways in which those are connected. As I think about the work that we do, and as I think about the decisions that come before council, that's the balance I try to strike. When we have developers coming and asking for changes that are going to redevelop a site or create ground up housing, especially if they're displacing existing residents, how do we make sure we're protecting those residents, that we're building in right to return when we have the ability to do that? I know Nora mentioned that, and I have that as part of my answer to the next question, so I'll leave it there. But when we have opportunities for leverage as decision makers, I believe we should use it, and we should use it to help meet those real critical priorities. And right now, one of our most critical is certainly the housing issue.
Thank you. Nora?
I want to say ditto to everything that Councilmember Tovo said. I thought she did a really good job of trying to explain that there's so many, if you move down one direction, you're always going to have somebody opposed in that direction. You can move in the direction of trying to put more housing, more development, and more affordable housing using the density bonus program, but ultimately there might be a neighborhood that doesn't really like that idea. So you have to balance it, and it gets complicated and difficult and political in a lot of ways. So you have to sort of understand sort of what you're getting and what's going away. I do think that there was one most recent thing that the council did that has really, I think you'll start to see its fruition and its success, and that is something called Affordability Unlock. They were successful in moving it very fast through the system from a resolution all the way to an ordinance. And it allows nonprofit developers to team up with developers to use a smaller lot to produce more housing. It can be controversial because you could be also, having one particular lot where it was in a neighborhood, and all of a sudden, you have a duplex or a fourplex. But what Affordability Unlock allows is that you have to have at least half of those units affordable. So where you might be moving someone out at their choice because they couldn't afford to pay the taxes, they ultimately could be moving two people or two families back in so that they can stay in that neighborhood. So again, just so you understand that there's always another side to a good idea or a bad idea. And so that's why we always sit here and talk about how we advocate for some of these policies and try to move things forward in the most balanced way that's possible. And that's not always possible, but I think our council right now are doing as best a job as they can in trying to get that done.
Thank you both for your answers. I'm just gonna move a little quickly because we're running out of time, but I do want to make sure we get to all the questions. So we'll start off with Anne for this one. What role does access to transportation play in the impact of displacement, and how do these issues intersect? I know everyone could probably comment on this, but for now, let's start off with Anne on this question.
I'll be shorter because I know we're trying to wrap up so people have a chance to ask questions. But basically, the bottom line is that you know, well, access to transportation is fundamental to be able to get to any of the things that people need to do to live. And so from a policy standpoint, it's critical that the city addresses the impact of transportation improvements, most notably right now, Project Connect, and understands and acknowledges the impact on neighborhoods. And this is an example of what Yasmin was talking about earlier. This is how improvements come to a neighborhood. They rise, the prices are raised, people are pushed out. We don't want that to happen with Project Connect. And so that's where we put in the 300 million anti-displacement. But I want to say that the struggle here is to make this real, this policy with regard to Project Connect, and also with regard to everything we do in terms of, infrastructure improvements in our city. And the policy that we have to remember is that anti-displacement funding and anti-displacement dollars are not an add-on. They're not a nice to have, just extra thing. They are systemic, part and parcel of the project. And so I want to emphasize that because that point has been a bit difficult to make at times, but it's really important. The other point that I think is important to talk about is community-led solutions. It's we don't need to be telling people what they need in their neighborhood. We need to be listening to people and understanding what would be helpful to them. And they design what they need, which is fundamental to what we were trying to do with the 300 million. So I'll stop right there. I just wanted to mention from a policy perspective, those key points.
Thank you so much for that.
Anne's right on the money, right? So your ability to move freely around your city and access different benefits will allow you to actually stay here. You being able to get to a hospital, you being able to get to a job, you being able to get to your work, you being able to get to your, your school, your house, your food, all that stuff. So when you don't have access to that transportation, that's going to continue to disenfranchise you, continue to make you smaller and smaller and smaller, so that when that one gust of wind, that one late bill, that one medical issue, that one broken down car, that one missed rent, when that gust of wind does finally get to you, because it gets to everybody, you're at such a disenfranchised position that you're not able to stabilize and come through that situation. So it directly impacts your ability to stay in your potential displacement. Additionally, the transportation itself, even if you have access, right, the transportation itself, and this is what Anne was going into, right, that again, that shiny thing in the hood acts as a thing to raise prices for the surrounding plats of land around it, because now there's a shiny thing here, so now it's meritorious, even though it wasn't in 1928. Now it's the thing. And so that acts as a way to displace people as well. And I'll end where Anne ended. I think we are starting to come along to the idea that we're not just laying down concrete, right, or putting in a line anymore. You are literally threading the veins by which our society operates. That's the impact transportation and mobility have. And if you can't, if you cannot reach the due diligence of ensuring that people are not pushed out due to the very action that you are taking, you shouldn't be in that business, right? It's not like Anne said, it's not the sprinkles on top, it's not the icing on top. It's part of transportation to actively account for disenfranchised populations that by your very actions will be further disenfranchised.
Absolutely. Thank you both for your answers on that question. This is our last question for this evening. And we're going to start off with Kathy Tovo. So how have your districts been affected by gentrification, and how does the city work to protect, empower, or assist displaced constituents?
Well, I would say, you've heard a lot of conversation today about one of, I think, the most successful programs that we're going to have for preventing displacement. And so I just want to really call out Yasmin and Councilmember Kitchen for their work on that, because that will ensure that we don't repeat some of the mistakes of the past. For example, the East Riverside Regulating Plan, which rezoned lots of properties and in essence incentivized the redevelopment of that area, which in part we wanted, but it didn't provide opportunities for how those residents who are currently living there would be able to remain. One of the things in my district, you can see this really clearly, the impacts of gentrification in a couple of key areas. I would cite the Rainey district downtown as one of the main ones. This was a thriving Mexican-American neighborhood in 2005, long before any of us were involved, I think, with city issues, or at least in formal ways on the city council. That area was rezoned to central business district. And within a really rapid period of time, you saw many of those properties change hands. They developed as restaurants and bars, and there are no residents there in that area. So that's a really striking example of how a land use change can prompt, the wholesale displacement of existing residents in that case. In other areas that I represent, Bolden Creek, same, it was a working class or a similar transformation, though one that didn't happen as a result of land use changes, but it was a working class, ethnically diverse neighborhood that in the last years has really transformed into pretty expensive real estate, and you've seen a lot of changes in that area. Some of the things that we're doing that I think are meaningful. There was a discussion a little bit earlier about a right to return policy. It took a long while, but that was something I focused on and was able to pass into policy. And we now are implementing a right to return policy in our Austin Housing Finance Corporation properties. And this is giving priority and preference to individuals with generational ties to a neighborhood. So when we have those units that are affordably priced or affordable ownership opportunities, there will be a preference on individuals who are at risk of displacement or have been displaced and have generational ties to that neighborhood where the housing is constructed. So I'm really excited about that. I hope, and I think you'll see that we're, when we have those other opportunities for leverage with a zoning case or other kinds of things, I hope we're going to embed that right to return policy within there. The same is true of tenant protections. We've done some good work in getting tenant protections when we have leverage, and I think we need to continue to work toward that.
Mhm.
I think I'll stop there for the moment, but tenant stabilization, preventing evictions, tenant assistance are also part of that work of making sure that we're helping keep people in their homes, in their home communities, and then their neighborhoods. But we've got a tremendous amount more to do.
Absolutely.
And I will just add that in South Austin and in District 5, we've touched on this before, but I want to emphasize it. We have aging affordable housing stock. And we're seeing the impact of demolitions and replacement with much more expensive units. And we're seeing these in zoning cases in front of us. And the zoning cases that come to us is the good news, because that gives us an opportunity to work with a developer to try to protect as much as we can and preserve the access to some affordability. But again, it's at this point, it's very challenging because we can't require, we have to negotiate essentially. And it's one of the things we need to continue to work on. So I'll just give you one example recently in my district, and this is becoming more typical. An older 40-unit apartment complex with about half of it affordable units to be replaced in a highly desirable area with addition of a couple of floors, more than doubling the size. And I am quite clear that the location will drive the prices up astronomically. People will not be able to stay there. We were able with that case because of, the position we were in with the zoning request to work with the developer to negotiate affordable units in the new development, along with the kind of tenant protections that Kathy's been talking about, a right to return, moving assistance, reductions in rent and rent freezes, and affordability in the new development. But the problem with these zoning cases is they're individual case by case. And one of the things that we have talked about as part of our work around the land development code that we've started to begin working on is improving the existing programs that we have, the VMU program, which is a program that incents affordable housing, improving upon those, adding other options where we can, and really working on preservation and things like preservation bonuses, because what we're seeing is a lot of demolitions right now that don't require any zoning changes, and we're seeing existing affordable stock replaced with much more expensive, larger homes, and even in places where we can replace a home is replaced with multiple units, that they're both both 2 or 3 of them can be more affordable than the original unit. And so this is an area where there's been a lot of discussion. What do we mean by affordability? What is the land development code changes we need to look at? And my perspective on it is, I believe that we need more housing in Austin, but I also believe that we need to pay attention to the affordability of the new housing that we are allowing and encouraging to happen. Because simply allowing more units doesn't keep people in Austin and doesn't stop pushing people out of Austin.
Yeah, 100%. All right, well, thank you all so much for your amazing answers today and the conversation we were able to have. And everyone, you'll now have an opportunity to connect with one of the panelists to ask any questions you had about today's conversation or their experience as women in a political field. Obviously, we're tight. We're going to come back right at 6:30 to close out as a group, just for a couple minutes over, if folks are able to do that. I'm going to go ahead and have Sydney drop the link for our exit survey before we go into breakouts, just to make sure everyone receives it. It helps us get a better, it helps us get better to have your feedback, tongue twister. And as a reminder for our students out there who may be receiving academic credit for attending this event, you must fill out the form, the exit survey, to have your attendance today validated for your professor. And all right, let's go ahead and open our breakout rooms, and I'll see you back here in the main room for a closeout right at 6:30. Thank you guys so much.
Done a lot of fundraising. So I got asked in 2013 to come and raise money for the bond campaign. And I didn't know anything about, I had never done a bond campaign. I'd never done any kind of bond issues like that. So I met with a person, I said yes. And I don't know if y'all remember hearing about Keep Austin Affordable. Well, that campaign was when we started in 2013. So right. Well, did I answer the questions? I mean, was there anything that anyone wanted to know a little bit more about in terms of when we were talking about stuff? You can put in the chat if you don't want to talk. Okay.
If not, I have a question for you. Can you just let us know some of the challenges you have faced in your career trajectory, especially being like a woman in politics?
So I got involved really, really early, like all of you, in just getting involved in student government. And, you know, when I went to college, I was in the student senate, and I just really loved it. But my dad was kind of the person, you know, he got involved. We had some junkyards not far from our house in our little neighborhood that we grew up. I grew up in San Antonio, and he kind of involved the community and got all of them excited. So I kind of saw what he did, and I kind of learned through that process over the years. And then I went to go work for Democratic elected officials, statewide elected officials. And I worked, you know, for Jim Hightower at the Department of Agriculture. And then I went to John Sharp at the Comptroller's office. And when I was at the Comptroller's office, John Sharp asked me to put a team together to investigate whether or not we could start a lottery. So that's how I started in that, and ultimately became the very first lottery director in Texas and ran it for the first 7 years. But I've always been doing campaigns with statewide elected officials. I always say to people, if you want to run for office, you got to have it in your gut. You got to have the fire in your gut. If you don't, then it will tear you apart if you don't love it. And so I became more of a consultant to people that were in office than I was myself in office. It never really drew me in that direction because I figured I could help more people in the direction I was headed. But you know, I haven't changed politics, but I've changed arenas of topics. And so I consider myself a generalist. So once I take on that topic, I really engage myself in that topic and learn as much as I can. And then when it's time to go to the next one, I go to the next one, right? So agriculture, you know, here we go. Legislative, you know, I've worked in the legislative budget board, and then of course, you know, now housing. So again, it's where your passion is, you know, just learn what you want to learn and go do it, right? Does that answer your question?
Yes, beautifully. Thank you so much. Katie, I saw your message. Give me just a second.
Take your time. It says it has to be a person, either the owner or a person that's within the organization.
Got it. Let me change that.
Thank you so much.
Well, I hope you all enjoyed it. I think we're going to be going out of the breakout sessions, but I hope you
In the there we go. Perfect.
each one of you talk about affordability all the time.
All right, thanks y'all so much for coming back to the larger room here. Before we get off, I know that was a short Q&A time, and it would have been amazing to have as long as possible, but just wanted to say, look out for some upcoming events from Ignite National. So at the end of January, we have legislative advocacy, Activate Your Activism. In March through April, we have the Activate Your Advocacy Boot Camp. And the deadline for that is March 13th. And then the run now for the spring. And y'all can find out about those events on our calendar page. Amazing events, and definitely perfect for people who really want to get involved in the programming that we have here at Ignite. And then the last thing is just let's connect. So I mean, if you're a participant and you want to drop your social in the chat, if our panelists are comfortable sharing their contact information for further outreach, then that would be phenomenal. So awesome. The survey needs permission. That is great. Thanks y'all so much for pointing that out. I'm gonna go fix that right now. Perfect.
Baby.
But I'm gonna go ahead. Let me make sure. Oh goodness, that this is fixed here. It should be open to everyone. That's really unfortunate.
No worries, Jess. I just got it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, you got it, you said?
It's working now.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much. Yeah, please drop your socials in the chat and grab them from others. And thanks y'all so much for joining us today for the First Austin Community Council. Panelists, you have been phenomenal. And if you need to go ahead and log off, I know we're a little bit over now, but I'm going to stay on and collect those Instagrams. So I'll catch y'all later if you have to head out, but thank you so much.
Thank you all so much. I enjoyed it.
Awesome.
As
Good
did
to see
I.
all
Thank
of you.
you.
Jess, can I ask a question?
Sure. Yeah.
I was wanting to learn about, so Dr. Cook Heffron was telling me that St. Ed's has a chapter with Ignite, and I wanted to learn about getting involved with that.
Love that. Nicole Clifford is actually on the call. She's the president of our Ignite chapter. And Nicole, I'm just going to go ahead and let you get in touch with Katie and give her your email. That is the most direct way to do it, is get involved right from the source. But I'm a former St. Ed's kid, and I was in the chapter for several years. So you can always still reach out to me if you want to talk or learn more or get virtual coffee or whatever. But
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
yeah, absolutely. Here, let me put my email address. I forgot. Awesome. But I think it's been very successful. So I appreciate everyone being able to come tonight.